welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be creating 3 cards showing different ways to use frames. So I think that adding frames to your cards really creates a nice focal point. And we're also going to be using some of this month's Spellbinders clubs. So for my first card, we're going to create a circle aperture. So I've got this piece of gorgeous foiled paper. That's from this Spellbinders Serenade of Autumn pack. That's not one of the clubs, it's just a really pretty paper pack. You can get an idea of what's in it from the front, and there's lots of these foiled pieces in it as well. And I'll be doing a video using that in a few weeks as well. So for this one, I want to create a frame around an aperture. So first I need to create my aperture. So I've got a cream 5-inch square card blank. Then I've got a 4.5-inch square from gold cardstock, and then this piece is about 1/8 of an inch smaller than the gold piece. So I'm going to glue these all together. So then I'm going to use circle die to cut an aperture in the front of the card. So I'm going to go all the way through all 3 layers. So you'll notice I had a little accident here where the tape that I was using to hold down my die, I wasn't careful enough when I was taking it off. But luckily we're going to put a bit of an image down here anyway, so I'm not worried about that, thankfully. And then I've cut this frame which will pop on in a second, and that is using this die that I used to cut this and the next one bigger to create that nice little frame. Before I do that, I'm going to use this You're Such a Blessing. This is the stamp of the month, and it's these lovely pumpkins. I'm going to use this You Are Such a Blessing, and I want to stamp that through the aperture, and I'm going to heat emboss that in here. And it's nice then because then it will show through the aperture, but it'll also be inside your card when you open it as well. So I'm actually going to stamp this through the aperture so that I can see where it's going. And then I'm going to heat emboss it in gold. So then that shows really nicely through there. So I'm just going to add on my frame. So then we're going to use some of these elements from this month's Die of the Month. And you can see on the picture that this is designed to be used as like a really cute scarecrow. But I want to use it for something a little bit different today. So I've got these pieces that have the faces in them, but we're actually going to cover those faces up. So I've got the little tops that come out of the pumpkins. So I'm just going to add those to the top of the pumpkins. And then I can add them to my card. I'm going to make sure to cover over that bit of a mistake just here. So I'm going to add some of these leaves on. And you can see that on this card, the frame frames the aperture and kind of brings a focal point to the card that I think is really lovely. So then that's that card done. I really love using things like this, completely different to how they're supposed to be used. So obviously it was designed as the scarecrow, and we've used it in kind of a more elegant way. And don't get me wrong, I think the scarecrow is super cute too, but I love that it's so versatile. So for this next one, I'm going to use this cute frame, and I don't know if you remember this, it was part of the stitching die of the month a few months ago. I'll link it below. It's a 3-part die, the 2 edges cut and the middle piece embosses these lines onto it. But obviously if you don't have that, you can always use 2 oval dies to create the frame instead. And then I've used this Stampin' Die of the Month. So I showed you this a second ago. If you buy it with the dies too, then You get all of these dies to cut these out, and then this one can be used for all three of these sub-sentiments as well. So I've stamped and die cut those two key pieces, and then I've obviously got this orange card base, and I'm going to set it out how I want it, so that I've then got room to stamp this where I want it as well. So for this card, the frame is kind of bringing the pieces together. So then I'm going to heat emboss this You Are Such a Blessing, same one I used before. I'm going to heat emboss that in gold again. So then I'm going to glue on my frame. And then I'm going to pop up these elements on foam pads. And then I can add on these elements. So I've purposefully added them so that they go slightly off the edge. So I'm going to just trim off those edges. And then I'm just going to add on a few gold gems. These are from these Spellbinders Fashion Gold embellishments. So then that's that card done. And then for my final card, I've used this 3D embossing folder of the month to emboss this white piece of cardstock, and I'm going to colour this in. So I'm going to use my Autumnal artist markers, and I'm going to use the lines of the embossing folder as though it was like a colouring page. So then here's my finished coloured piece. So I'm just going to glue that onto a card blank. And then I've cut this frame just by using 2 stitch rectangles. I'm just going to add that to my card. And I think you'll see, as soon as I add this frame on, it kind of makes the background into a feature as opposed to just a background. And then I've got this thanks. So I've hot foiled this using the Glimmer of the Month kit, which I'll pop on screen now. And you can see there's the thanks, which has the die that goes with it. And then there's a selection of sub-sentiments. I'm not going to use the sub-sentiments today, I'm just going to use this thanks. But it's really pretty. I love that text and the shine's gorgeous. So I'll just hot forward that onto green cardstock. And then I'm going to pop some foam strips behind that so that we can pop it up. And I really love this technique of colouring in embossing folders when they've got so much detail like this. But I don't want to do all that hard work and then cover it up. I want that to be the focal point of the card, which is why we're going to add the frame and then just a simple sentiment so that you can see all of that colouring. So then I can add this onto my card. And I think that's really pretty now it's finished. So then there are all 3 of today's cards. I hope you've enjoyed creating them with me and using frames in different ways. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below. You can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used to create today's cards are listed in the description below. There's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.